The ticking of the clock had never felt so slow. It was as if time itself was grinding to a halt. For Jack, seconds felt like hours. He sat there, his eyes locked onto the cold, sterile doors of the operating room, refusing to look at the people passing by in the corridor. Excitement, happiness, fear. Could a person truly feel all of these at once? Jack was. His wife, Martha, was behind those doors, and all Jack wanted was for his daughter to be born, and to see them both safe and sound. Martha had dreamed of having a child since the very first day they were married. She spoke about it almost every single day. They'd even planned a room in their modest house on Willow Street to be the nursery. However, out of a strange kind of superstition, they had left it completely empty. No furniture, no crib, just a room full of hope. Jack loved children too, of course, but he was hesitant. How long had they even been married? He knew the difficulty of raising a child before they had even fully enjoyed their own love, and he understood the massive responsibility of such a tiny life. Before they married, he used to visit his sister Clara and her 2 toddlers. Every visit was a scene of pure chaos. Good Lord, raising children is so hard, he would mutter to himself, often cutting his visits short. That was why he had been so cautious. But on their first wedding anniversary, Jack had made a decision. He was finally going to say yes to Martha's deepest wish. That evening, when he came home and said, "Martha, honey, get ready. I've made reservations at a beautiful place." The happiness on her face was beyond description. Truth be told, Jack didn't much care for going out. The crowds, the traffic, and the endless, meaningless hustle of people weren't for him. That was why they had chosen a home on Willow Street, so close to his work. Being home with his wife, in the peaceful silence of their sanctuary, was his favorite thing. Martha knew this day was special. She spent the entire afternoon deciding what to wear, trying on every outfit she owned, only making a final choice 30 minutes before Jack arrived. She was still finishing her hair and makeup when he walked through the door. He called out from the hallway, "Honey, are you ready? The taxi is waiting." "I'm almost done, sweetheart. I'll be right there," she shouted back excitedly. When Martha finally emerged from the room, Jack looked at her as if spellbound. "You look stunning, honey," he said, planting a soft, loving kiss on her lips. Once they had ordered their dinner at the restaurant, Jack couldn't wait any longer. "Martha, honey, I know there's one thing you've wanted more than anything since we got married." Martha's eyes sparkled as she listened, holding her breath. Jack continued, "I want us to have a baby just as much as you do, and I think the time has come." Martha couldn't believe her ears. She was trembling with excitement. She immediately stood up, ran around the table, and threw her arms around him. "I love you so much." 3 months later, Martha felt something different in her body. She had to be sure. One morning, as Jack went downstairs for breakfast and poured his coffee, Martha sat silently, watching him. It might be too early to say anything, she thought. After seeing Jack off to work, she quickly got ready and went to the pharmacy 2 blocks away. She bought a pregnancy test. On the way home, she felt as if she wasn't walking, but floating through the air. As soon as she got home, she opened the box and took out the test. When she saw the result, her eyes widened. "No way. I have to do it again," she muttered. The second test showed the same thing. 2 lines. "Yes, it finally happened. I'm pregnant," she screamed, her voice echoing through the house. She had to prepare a magnificent dinner for that evening. Everything had to be perfect when she gave her husband this beautiful news. When Jack came home and saw the elaborate table, he looked at his wife in confusion. "Honey, do we have guests coming over today?" "Yes, we have a very special guest today." "Now, wash your hands and come to the table." Jack washed up and sat down, still puzzled. "Honey, aren't we going to wait for the guest to eat?" "Our guest is already with us," Martha said with a beaming smile. Jack looked around the room. "Martha, are you okay?" "There's no one else here." Martha, her eyes filling with tears, slowly placed her hand on her stomach. "Our guest is right here." Jack was so stunned he dropped his water glass onto the table. "I can't believe it. You're pregnant." He swept Martha into his arms and lifted her off the ground. Their happiness was a sight to behold, especially Martha's. who had waited so long for this moment. During their subsequent appointments at Evergreen State Medical Center, they were filled with a unique excitement every time. On the way to one visit, Jack asked, "Honey, today we'll find out the gender. Do you think it's a boy or a girl?" Inwardly, Jack really wanted a son, but fearing Martha might be disappointed if it were a girl, he said, "I think either would be wonderful. It's our baby, and we'll give it all our love, won't we?" Martha replied with relief. "You know you're a wonderful husband, right? Inside, doctor." Alice was seriously moving the ultrasound transducer over Martha's stomach, studying the screen. Jack looked at the monitor from the side, but he had no idea what those grainy images were supposed to mean. "Finally, doctor," Alice smiled. "Congratulations, Mrs. Sullivan. You're going to have a beautiful baby girl." Tears of joy streamed down Martha's face. Jack felt a brief pang of disappointment that it wasn't a boy, but he never let it show. Martha had the nursery ready before her belly had even fully grown. A small crib, a pink wardrobe, colorful balloon stickers on the wall, and as a final touch, a light pink chandelier shaped like a cloud. It was a perfect room for a baby girl. Martha loved spending time in that room. Now, only one thing remained, the birth of their sweet daughter. Since it would be a C-section, the date was set. There was only 1 week left, and now the big day had arrived. As Jack waited in the corridor, time refused to pass. Beads of sweat began to trickle down his forehead. Suddenly, the automatic doors slid open, and a nurse came out carrying a baby wrapped tightly in a blanket. Jack bolted to his feet. Before taking the baby to the neonatal unit, the nurse held her toward the father. "Congratulations, sir. You have a beautiful baby girl." Jack's heart began to beat like a drum. He was looking at his daughter for the very first time. The tiny girl's eyes were still closed. "She looks just like her mother. She's beautiful," he could only whisper, his voice trembling. As the nurse was about to enter the room, he called out, "Wait! What about my wife? Is Martha okay?" The nurse entered without answering and placed the baby in an incubator. As she headed back toward the operating room, Jack blocked her path again. He looked at the name tag on her lapel. "Nurse Chloe, how is my wife? Please, tell me something." The nurse gave a small smile. "Calm down, sir. Your wife is perfectly fine. The labor is continuing. You can see your second baby shortly," she said, before disappearing inside. Jack stood frozen in the corridor. "How is this possible?" he whispered, sinking slowly into a chair. "There must be a mistake. They must have mixed us up with someone else." All the appointments flashed before his eyes. He had never missed a single one. Wouldn't the doctor have told them if they were having twins? Why would they hide something like that? Then, the door opened once more. Nurse Chloe approached slowly, again carrying a wrapped infant. Jack jumped up. Before even looking at the baby, he stared into the nurse's eyes. "Are you sure there isn't another woman giving birth in there? We weren't expecting twins." The nurse's face grew serious. "Sir, I have worked here for 15 years and I have never made a mistake. There is no other woman giving birth in there but your wife." At that moment, Jack's gaze fell upon the baby in the nurse's arms. The words caught in his throat. But those eyes. This baby had Asian features. The nurse took the second baby to the neonatal unit and laid it down beside its sibling. Jack stared through the glass in total shock. The sweat on his forehead was pouring now. In seconds, dozens of thoughts raced through his mind. How could an Asian baby be possible? He thought of the college student who came to mow the lawn. What was his name? It was a strange name he could never remember, so he just called him Mike. Could it be him? How could Martha do this to him? They hadn't even been married for 2 years. How was this betrayal possible? Rage burned in Jack's eyes. He clenched his fists. "Martha is going to answer for this the moment she gets out," he muttered through gritted teeth. As the nurse headed back into the operating room, Jack cut her off again. "Nurse Chloe, when can I see my wife?" The nurse said calmly. "Don't worry, sir. The labor is continuing. You'll see her soon." And the door closed, leaving Jack alone with his suspicion. "Good God, what do you mean the labor is continuing?" "Triplets?" he groaned, collapsing where he stood. His head was throbbing painfully. Betrayal, 3 children, Martha. Everything was attacking his mind at once. Every tick of the wall clock felt like a hammer blow to his skull. "I'm going to kill Mike! I'll find him!" he ranted. Just then, the door opened again. Nurse Chloe was coming toward him with yet another baby. This time, a sound of crying echoed through the hall. "Sir, congratulations. Your third child has been born." Jack couldn't even speak now. He leaned over the baby with eyes full of terror. "No! This has to be a joke! This baby's skin was the color of cafe au lait!" "Are you mocking me? How is this even possible?" The nurse was losing her patience. "Sir, I have been," Jack cut her off. "I know. You've been here 15 years and never made a mistake. But we were expecting one white baby girl. First you bring an Asian baby, now a black baby, and you're telling me they're mine? How is this possible?" The nurse gave Jack a sharp look. "Sir, I don't have time for this. The doctor is waiting for me," she said, placing the third child with the others and rushing back inside. Jack was looking around, frantic. "This has to be a joke. There's a hidden camera somewhere," he said. He searched the corridor but saw nothing. He checked the clock. It was just a normal clock. Then he thought of his best friend. After Mike, was it him too? His black friend Tommy. He came over to the house often, and he and Martha got along famously. Martha even suggested inviting him over for dinner sometimes. Damn it. What sin did I commit, Lord? How could such a disaster happen to me? His head began to spin. With one last effort, he threw himself into a chair. As he gasped for air, he saw a doctor coming out of the room. "Dr. Harrison, please stop!" Jack told him everything in one frantic breath, hoping for a logical medical explanation. The doctor looked at the sweat-drenched Jack and spoke calmly. "Sir, this is a 1,000,000,000 event in medicine, and I suppose you are that lucky person. But rest assured, it is scientifically impossible for a woman to be pregnant by 3 different men at the same time. I'm sure your wife is a loyal woman. Set your mind at ease." Jack calmed down slightly after this explanation, but he was still staring through the glass at his 3 very different children. Would Nurse Chloe bring one more, or was it over? He imagined himself at home with Martha and these 3 children. The constant crying, the endless sleepless nights, the chaos, and then them growing up, tearing the house apart. Jack didn't earn much. The education, the expenses for 3. These thoughts swirled as he kept a fearful eye on the operating room door. When the sound of the automatic door came again, Jack was afraid to even look. You could hear his heart thumping from across the room. Slowly, fearfully, he turned his head. Nurse Chloe was approaching with a 4th baby in her arms, a massive grin on her face. Jack's eyes nearly popped out of his head. "No, no, this is too much! God, no!" he moaned, trying to crawl away from the nurse. At that moment, he heard a voice. Jack, wake up, honey. Today is the day our daughter is born." "We need to get to the hospital." Jack snapped his eyes open. He looked first at Martha, then at her enormous belly. He took a long, deep breath and collapsed back onto the bed in relief. It had all been just a terrible nightmare.